Hello, friends. On episode 251 of the Gritty Bowmen podcast, we had the pleasure of hanging out with my friends Ryan and Hillary Lampers from the Hunt Harvest Health podcast to talk testosterone, gut health, diet, and more. That same evening, Ryan and Hillary joined me in a discussion with my good friend and backcountry food aficionado, Heather Kelly, the maker of Heather's Choice Backcountry Meals. On this episode, the four of us nerd out on backcountry food and discuss our shared passion for good eating in the backcountry. Heather is a nutrition expert in her own right, and she spares no expense in the creation of her backcountry meals, and it shows in her products. I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to interview both Heather Kelly and Ryan and Hillary all together on the same episode of Gritty Bowmen. Check it out. If you like this episode and you want more like it, let Heather and Hillary and Ryan know how you feel. I hope this episode gets you excited to try some of Heather's products and to start experimenting with some of your own meals at home. If I recommend to people, if they're going to do a fish oil supplement, I really like Cinnamon Tingle, Green Pastures. They do not sponsor the podcast.
But maybe they will.
But it's fermented cod liver oil. Don't let the word fermented or cod liver oil put you off. Focus.
But it is from a cod's liver.
Focus on Cinnamon Tingle, okay?
Really brings it forward. But when we talk about the backcountry, that was one thing that people had a lot of questions about is what are the good sources of fat they could be taking?
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing.
When he told me Heather's Choice, I was like, that's not like a very rugged name. It's kind of like...
Sounds like a boom chicka wow wow kind of like movie or something.
So that would be fun to work towards.
Jesse Wise from Train to Hunt said you were working on a dehydrated donut for him.
Oh, he did, huh? He's probably the same guy who said I'm working on a dehydrated ribeye bag.
Welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast in Missoula, Montana, at Mark Livesey's house, right? Mm-hmm. In beautiful Missoula.
Very nice
We're at the
house.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous 2017, and we have a very, very special guest on tonight. That's my radio voice right there. Special
That's good.
guest.
That's good.
Yeah. We had Heather's Choice on here last year. And you do backcountry food. And we had that was a great podcast. One of them. And I laughed pretty hard that night. It was a really fun.
It was all the Scotsmen.
It was. It was very, very fun. But we learned a lot about backcountry food, about the product that you make. And then we tested it, and it passed with flying colors. And then Aaron and I used it this year on a bunch of our hunts. So we have you on tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition, backcountry nutrition.
Yep.
Is that what we call it? That is that?
Sure.
So you did a seminar today that Ryan and I missed because we were delayed.
We were delayed.
Lollygagging.
Upon a hill.
we hiked the morning hike and we got to hanging out, and so we missed it. But we wanted to.
I don't think either one of us wanted to let the other one beat him a little bit further to the top.
No, we didn't.
You kept going, so I kept going. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to say, "Hey, come on, I'm tired."
I'm like, should we stop? And Ryan's like, I don't know. Do you want to stop? No, I don't want to stop.
The trick question.
I feel good.
I feel good.
I'm sweating a lot, but
and
I feel
I'm
good.
at the very back of the line going, oh, my God, I hope one of them stops because I know my husband will never stop. Somebody else stop, please.
Yeah, so I also have with me Ryan Lampers and Hillary Lampers from Hunt Harvest Health and Stealthy Hunter. And all three of us are going to gang up on Heather. No. And we're going to talk about this seminar that you did today. So, and then I have some selfish questions about how Heather's Choice is doing and stuff like that. And I want to hear about the future of it and all of that kind of stuff because it's exciting and it's really cool to see someone launch a product and a brand like this and to have it actually, I mean, like you're an entrepreneurial like dream story. So I want to get into that. So first of all, tell us kind of your spiel from this morning.
Yeah. So at the Backcountry Hunter and Anglers Rendezvous, they asked me to do an hour-long talk, and the very broad topic of backcountry nutrition.
Was that intimidating, like for an hour? Or did you like go, I can geek out on this?
I was like, I don't know how I'm actually going to pull this off in an hour and not let this go on all day long. So got enough coffee in me to do the first one at 8:45 this morning. And it was actually a really good turnout of, the geeky.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really impressed how many smart people were in the room. They had some really good questions. People were throwing around like A1Cs and some really big terms like that. Had another guy who had like the textbook definition of rabbit starvation, which was pretty impressive. So just very, very educated people.
What is rabbit starvation?
So the idea is that if you try to simply live off of rabbits, it's all protein and you're never getting enough fat from them.
Yeah.
And so eventually your metabolism can just shut down. You can die with a stomach full of rabbit because you're getting protein but no carbs and no fats. Your body simply can't metabolize it and actually utilize it for energy.
Wow.
So do not try to live on rabbits alone. just letting
Those of you out there raising rabbits, just eat
those of you
you're in trouble.
we're gonna do that. Don't do it.
Absolutely. So yeah, in order to keep it short and sweet, I basically covered the basics of nutrition. So we talked about some of the same things from the last podcast that my nutritional philosophy is largely wrapped around this idea that we evolved as hunter-gatherers and that we are physiologically adjusted best to a diet that emulates that of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So that means high-quality meats and fish, which an audience that is geeked on hunting and fishing, they warmly welcomed that.
Yes.
And then it gets a little stickier when I talk about eating fruits and vegetables. And then additionally, talking about getting enough good quality fats. So that stumped a few people as well. We spent a lot of time talking about omega-6 and omega-3 balance and probably lost some people there.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, after kind of making this assertion that we are best adapted to this type of diet, I went on to show some pictures of sort of the Inuit diet, which is going to be largely comprised of 80 to 90% fat.
And Inuit is, break it down.
Like really far north Alaska, but you would see that at any latitude all across the globe, it's going to be a very similar diet.
So how is that different
Like in the
from
Arctic Circle.
Eskimo?
Totally. Eskimo's derogatory.
Okay. That's what I need to know. Yeah. So don't call them Eskimos.
No. Need to memorize all of the
They're
different tribes
Inuit.
and all of their names.
Okay. And so basically they're all the way up there in the snow, and so they're living on, there's not a lot of fruits and vegetables growing.
Exactly.
So that diet consists heavily of
blubber. So you get a lot of seal fat, you get a lot of whale fat, and that's really all that they have. You might have times in the year where you might pick a couple of berries, in the fall or whenever things come into season. But those people are actually able to completely survive with a diet that's void of carbohydrates, essentially. So
I heard Ranilla on a show that he did where I think he went hunting for muskox on Meat Eater TV.
Yeah.
And I think he was up there with an Inuit tribe and it was really fascinating because they said that they had to eat an oil with a fish or something like that, or an oil with the seal oil with the fish because you needed that fat and the protein combo, or it was sort of like the starvation thing.
Totally.
It's a rabbit deal.
Yeah. So if you really are, you kind of have this ceiling on how much protein your body can process every day. And I was telling folks today, that might be 30 to 40% of your overall calorie intake. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if you're living in the Great White North and you need, say, 5,000 calories a day of just straight fat, you're probably dipping everything in oil just to try to keep up.
Right. Okay, so you have this Inuit tribe, and they have this extreme diet over here. And what was the other one you said?
The other one that I think is super interesting is the Okinawans, the Japanese, that are some of the longest lived people on the planet. And their diet primarily consists of these purple sweet potatoes. Like the really delicious ones you can get at the grocery store that you cut them open, you're like, holy shit, it's purple.
Like, they're like candy.
Yeah, they taste like birthday cake if you cook them right.
Or like sweet potato pie is it tastes like it's better than pumpkin pie. I don't know. It's good. And it's a lot of carbohydrate then?
Yeah, so 70% of their calories are coming from carbohydrates. So the reason I threw that out there was just to illustrate to people that, a lot of them are looking for, is it the paleo zone? Should it be 40, 30, 30 on my macros, no matter what time of year, no matter what I'm doing?
And just for people that know, when we talk macros, we're saying protein, fat, carbohydrate.
Totally. And just wanted to really make it crystal clear that no matter what I had to say during that hour, all of it had to be tested. All of it was individual. And there was absolutely no absolutes when it comes to nutrition, at least not in my mind.
Right.
There's as many diets as there are people on the planet.
I just heard Rob Wolf on the Joe Rogan podcast like last week, and he wrote the Paleo Solution for people who are listening. And he was saying, man, like 10 or 12 years ago, I was a lot more certain about everything than I am now.
Yeah.
And he was saying that it's now he's like, in general, there are some things that kind of hold true for everyone, but like, processed foods and lots of simple sugars are not good for you. But otherwise, he's like, there's a lot of differences by individual on what you should or shouldn't, or what you can eat, and what a diet should be made up of. And he's like, for example, for me, I know I do great on a keto kind of diet where I mostly eat fat, proteins and fats, and vegetables, but low carb vegetables. And he's like, my wife though, she does great on like tons of white rice and sweet potatoes and high carbs and even some breads. And he's like, if I eat like that, I am trashed.
Yeah, he's like, I'm tubby.
Yes, he's in a world of hurt. So, I think there are some general guidelines, but I think it's interesting you're comparing these two diets and that they're so diverse.
Yeah, they're hugely diverse,
and that's an ancestral diet, like hunter-gatherer style.
Totally, and you can still find those if you go far enough and deep enough. You can find people still following those traditional dietary systems. The other thing I was going to throw out there is even someone like Rob Wolf, who I think is just the man. His diet's changed a lot over his lifetime. He's tested a lot of different stuff and has put himself through like in really intense mass gains with a ton of milk and a ton of carbohydrates, and he really regretted it. But he tried it.
Yeah.
So after kind of throwing that out there, we just dove into carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And
what was your objective for bringing that up? Like, what were you trying to communicate exactly?
The objective for that was to kind of put some context around the foods that I was going to be recommending. So I'm always talking about using animal sources of protein and animal sources of fat as the preferential sources of food for us. And once again, tying that back to being hunter-gatherers, but then also to illustrate that anything I was going to say up there today is all open for interpretation and needs to be tested from individual to individual. So for me to say, all right, you need 40 grams of carbohydrates pre-workout and 100 grams of carbohydrates post-workout, it's BS unless you've actually tested it.
Yeah.
So wanted to avoid kind of having people shove me into that of telling them exactly what they need to do.
Hillary, shouldn't have more than 10% of your total macros be fat, okay? Like, I just don't think that's a good idea.
She's like, I would cut your head off.
I would turn into like Skeleton Girl at Halloween.
I've had people do that, though.
Like that.
Like, I'm at the gym, I'm doing some CrossFit thing, and they're like, what are your macros? And then you tell them, they're like, oh, that's wrong. That's wrong.
Oh, you're gonna die.
Yeah, you're. No wonder you're not as cool as me.
Yeah, well, you got to take context to like their age and what they actually, it's like a vegetarian, right? There's like really skilled vegetarians who know how to get protein, but most vegetarians are like drinking Coke and eating potato chips, because it's just to learn your macros and to learn the type of macro in that group. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's education that, and it's like knowing your body.
That's what I was going to say.
So like Ryan does better with more meat and vegetables and low carbs. And if I don't eat carbs, I feel horrible. I don't have the energy that I need. I'll lose too much weight. and lose my muscle mass. I'll burn through my muscle too fast. And so we've learned that over time. We can eat pretty much the same diet. It's just consistency, how much we exercise, and then what types of, like, I just don't want to eat tons of meat all the time. I don't feel good. I need some carb. And so you learn that. But I think diets are just bad, period. They screw people's heads up. What do you think about calorie counting? What do you think about calories in general? Because I'll let you answer that.
Man.
Like,
once again,
let's talk
rabbit
about
hole.
good calories. Okay, I'm talking about people count calories. But what do you feel about the whole concept of counting calories? What would be your advice on calories?
Let's say for this talk today about backcountry nutrition, over the past year, I've gotten a lot of folks who have come to me and said, I need 9,000 calories for a backcountry trip. And I'm like, you can't physically stomach that much food. So I think that people have like a really broad
funneling
idea.
the food in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, drinking olive oil and whatever.
How many packaroons is that?
That's a lot of macaroons. That's a lot of peanut butter even. So I think it's very useful to count calories just to establish a baseline. So I've been a pretty aggressive calorie counter for a while just because it's helpful for me to see that my baseline is not 1,600 calories a day. It's 2,400.
Right.
So when I head out into the backcountry, it might be 3,200. It might be even a little bit higher depending on the exertion level, the temperature, a lot of different factors.
So when you say baseline, it's like if you're just kind of sedentary and not really doing much, just to maintain health, 2,400 calories is kind of that number for you. Because of exertion, because of activities in the backcountry, because of what you're doing, it might be as high as 3,500. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that that's where it ends up being helpful for people is a lot of folks have no idea how many calories they take in day to day.
Yeah.
I had someone showing me this afternoon, like, okay, this day I had 1,000 calories. This day I had 4,000. This day I had 500. And they're kind of going through and they're like, why am I not losing weight? I'm like, there's no consistency.
Your body is freaked out and just trying to store as much as it can because you're starving yourself and then you're gorging yourself and you're starving yourself.
That's odd.
Which is what most people do. Really, most people that are dieting, they're calorie restricting. We talked about that with the hormones. It's not good. You calorie restrict, man. Your hormones are going to go down. Cholesterol is going to go down, and you're going to have a lot of problems.
I've never really done a lot of calorie restriction. I do a lot of calorie intake.
A lot of recreational eating.
Yeah.
But you're probably expending the energy. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Energy expenditure is going to equal your calorie intake.
Okay, so you have these two cultures, and then so you've highlighted that. And the difference between these two and how it's individual. So for some person they might need more carbohydrates. Some person might need more proteins or fat in the day or whatever. But that's something you kind of learn when you learn your own body, when you kind of get that dialed in. Some people may not know that, right? A lot of people probably don't. But what did you take with that? Like, what did you do with that? Because if you're preparing a backcountry meal, you probably have in there, a certain amount of macros, carbs, and fats.
Yeah, so the idea for that was to illustrate there's a lot of different diets. You got to test whatever works best for you. But here's a baseline to work with. So when we talked about proteins, I was making the assertion that everybody should try to take in 0.7 grams of protein to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that's assuming that people generally don't know what their lean body mass is. So even though that might be more accurate to say take in a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, unless you've gotten your body fat tested, you may not know what that is. So in order to make it a little bit more approachable and a little bit easier to calculate, I tell a lot of folks, gram of protein per pound of body weight, because most people never hit that number.
Right.
It's a lot of protein. Like if I'm 160 pounds, if I'm going to eat 160 grams of protein a day, that's like 20, 24 somewhere, without doing rough math.
Yeah.
20 to 24 ounces of protein in a day. That means I'm having 4 ounces at breakfast, so 3 eggs and an ounce of breakfast meat. I'm having 4 ounces of protein at lunch, and maybe having a smoothie, and then dinner. So a lot of people don't do that.
And I've kind of heard that number thrown out as a conventional number, like 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. I can't do it.
It's tough,
I can't
right?
eat like 190 grams of protein in a day. So I'm like, I just don't feel good and I don't feel right. So I'm really right around 120 to like 150 a day. And that for me, I've found really works. Like I feel like I recover fairly quickly. My muscles seem to regenerate, after a workout pretty well. Sometimes, it's even 110 every day. And for me, I've heard people say that's really low, for a guy that's lifting weights. But I've found that that seems to work really well for me. But I know I have a lot of friends who eat, way more than that, even 1.5 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass.
Yeah, if you're looking at more like the bodybuilding community, you might see upwards of 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Mm-hmm. And that's in order to maintain positive nitrogen balance so that they're always a little bit
jacked.
Just getting huge. So, just like you had mentioned, if you fall on the lower end of that spectrum, you take in 0.7 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. Mm-hmm. There's likely folks who aren't even getting that much every day.
Yeah.
And then they're wondering why they're always hungry. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from our dinner meals because they have, 40 to 50 grams of protein in each bag. Mm-hmm. And people will come to us and say, I can't even eat an entire one of your meals. Why is that? It's like, well, you're maybe not used to eating a lot of protein and you're getting a really strong satiety signal to the brain that's saying, I am full, I have eaten, I am done. Yeah. And people don't get that if they're mainly eating carbohydrates and fats.
I know when I'm eating the salmon chowder, because I eat that a lot, when I'm eating that, it's like, you gotta carve out like some time.
You have to chew your food.
You have to actually chew that stuff up, and it'll take a while. I get back to camp after a long day of hiking and stuff. And Aaron is notorious for just going to bed without eating. Like, you're tired, I'm just going to bed. If I do that, I'll a day, 2 days, 3 days, I'm just like can't function. Aaron will kind of just make up for it the next day or something, or he'll just lose weight. I just can't do it. And so I'll sit there and I'll be eating like about 30 minutes after he's gone to bed. And with Mountain House, it was sort of like all mushy and stuff. And you just put it in and kind of swallowed it like baby food. But this stuff you make is legit. Like, it's real, like chunks of fish. You're chewing stuff. Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of effort and
but
takes
it's
some work.
Totally worth it because
some calories eating it.
You poop it like a charm. Like it's and you feel great. You feel great. Now, I did have the Ethiopian Durawat.
The Dora what?
Durawat. Yeah. Is that what it's called?
It's called Dora what?
Durawat. Okay.
But people have been calling it Dora, huh?
Yeah, that makes more sense. It's so maybe it was that one. It was the chili.
Chipotle cherry?
That wrecked me. Wrecked me. I told you we need some more bland flavors.
And we heard that consistently this weekend at the Rendezvous. People are like, I really liked it, but it was too spicy for me.
Yeah.
It's on our radar to make some much more tame meals.
Gentle meals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Gentle
Okay,
line.
sorry. Tangent.
So just giving people somewhere to start with their protein, I feel like is really helpful. My background is mostly working with CrossFit athletes who a lot of times are weight loss oriented or performance oriented. Mm-hmm. So now applying that to the backcountry, I hear pretty consistently that people they don't regulate their appetite very well. And then additionally, they feel like they lose weight, or they don't recover well, or they just feel like they come off of a 10-day trip and they don't feel strong. They feel almost emaciated. And I would be curious to look at their nutrition plan and say, are you actually getting enough good quality proteins while you're out there, or are you living off sugar?
So I think we talked about this in the podcast after our hunt. We like recapped it, and I think we recapped all the gear we used, including Heather's Choice food. And so Aaron and I show up, and like a few days after I arrive in Colorado, and I unload because we moved there, I unload everything, and then we're hunting like a few days later. So Aaron was behind the times, like late and last minute, and I was last minute. So we spin into the store, and Aaron buys us this food, and then we get there, and I go and I buy some more. Well, it was a lot of crap.
Let's be honest.
Crap. Like complete cookies. What are those? Like I can't stand those things. Aaron kind of likes them. So we have like top ramen and tuna packets and then a lot of epic bars and some other stuff. But needless to say, there was mixed in there was a lot of just processed junk. So Aaron and I ate that for a solid week while we were just working our butts off. And it was cold. It snowed on us. This is the first week. It's not even September yet. It was really weird weather. Then we go home, and I'm like, dude, I cannot eat like this. And I just felt like crap. And so then we got, I had some Heather's Choice. I brought all the buckwheat meals with us, and then I brought tons of packaroons. And of course, then you got to bring all the salmon bites because those are rad. And then I got some of the meals, and some of the meals were, like I said, a little too spicy. Those were.
That's my devilish laugh. Like, gotcha, sucker.
Those did some. They tasted good going down, and then there was the later thing.
I think we already talked about putting a wet wipe like in there that you can take out as if you're having barbecue.
Exactly. So, but it was a night and day difference in how we felt coming home. How we, just ready to go out again, and then day after day. And we spent a lot of time in the field this year. And being able to eat a high quality food makes it's so, especially for me, like I think I'm fairly sensitive to what I eat. I can't get away with garbage like a lot of people do, probably because I eat pretty clean at home. And so it's like if I just went to eat McDonald's, I'd feel like crap. And that's pretty much what you're getting with like a Mountain House. So I think I'm very sensitive to that crap. And we as hunters tend to fill up at the store just as we're leaving town, and we throw our pack full of crap because that's what comes in a package at the store.
I think that's what most guys do. I think, unfortunately, I mean,
all kinds of backcountry.
I'll be honest,
people,
I used to do that. I used to just get whatever I could, get a bunch of stuff in there, and it happened to be a lot of sugar, a lot of processed foods, candy bars, stuff like that back in the day. And unfortunately, I think a lot of folks, they still do that, or they're going with these cheap meals. And they just expect to feel like crap at the end of it, right?
Right, like you were saying.
Like she said.
They're emaciated. They feel like
bag
garbage.
of bones at the end of the trip, right? And I think that's what's so great
That's
about
what a lot of people are used to.
Yeah. And that's where, we started doing our own meals and just kind of changing up our diet. And it's night and day. How you feel, like you said, when you got good food in you for maybe a week-long, 10-day trip. I mean, you still feel strong on day 7.
Dude, I would not eat those packages at home day in and day out. I wouldn't eat that crappy food that I'm eating. I would not choose to eat that.
Right. But when you're back there, you need the absolute best stuff, the best quality. It's when you're at your peak performance or when you need to be at your
But
peak
I figured it too, like when a lot of times a guy only has 7 days or 14 days to go on a hunt, and then he's home for the next 3 months. And so he's like, I'll just be emaciated, kill myself, and have this epic adventure.
I'll make up for it later.
And then later, it's just 2 weeks.
Right.
But I told you this last year, I don't want to go to the CrossFit gym. I don't want to hike these mountains with Aaron. I don't want to build this fitness and this temple of power. And then
is that what you call it now?
Well,
Temple of Power.
Just now. It's a pretty good name, don't you
think?
think?
It's like a rock group, like a disco group or something.
And I don't want to do that, and then get out there and just destroy it, and lose all those gains because they're really hard to get, you know.
Right.
And then to come home and to feel crummy, and before, I wasn't going out a week later or 2 weeks later. Now I am, and so it really is even more important to me that I don't lose all this health and wellness that I work hard for just because I'm leaving into the backcountry.
And let's be honest. I mean, how many times has a hunt come down to day 7, day 8, day 9, day 10, or whatever? And maybe it wouldn't have happened if you're feeling like crap at the end of it and you're weak and you're not willing to say, man, there's a big buck, he's 2 miles away. That's a long way to go down this draw. When you're feeling good and you're refreshed and you got all your energy, you're going to go there.
When you haven't had that chili and you're dialed.
Yeah.
No. So carry on.
So after we talked about nutrition, protein, we talked about the good sources. So once again, really pushing people to reach for animal sources of protein since they're going to have all the essential amino acids that they need. Because one of the first things people threw out there when I said, what's a good source of protein? It was like beans, almonds, all these vegetarian sources of protein. And it was really awesome to be able to say, hey, those can be high in protein, but you're going to have to eat 800 calories worth of almonds to get even a measurable amount of protein.
Right.
Not to mention all of the pro-inflammatory fats, which we talked about later. And people were super receptive to it, but I think it was pretty eye-opening for everybody that no one's eating enough protein. And if you are eating too much, your digestion probably feels pretty bad, and you just feel like, I can't stomach all of this, which I think is the power of protein, is that it almost self-regulates.
Right.
You can't necessarily put down a 20-ounce porterhouse unless you're just being dumb, like being a glutton on purpose. Yeah. So I think that if people were better at paying attention to their fullness and their hunger signaling, it would probably self-regulate pretty well for folks.
This is also where those digestive hormones come in, because as people, insulin gets dysregulated and they gain more weight, their hunger hormones change. So their ghrelin and their leptin and the things that tell their brain stop eating, and the things that say you're hungry, and the things that store it in your fat. A lot of these are digestive hormones. And as you get more insulin resistant and you start gaining more weight, you basically can turn off a lot of those signals. So these people that you see like on these reality TV shows and stuff that are like huge, and they are literally eating massive amounts of food, their brain does not tell them they're full anymore. So they're never satiated. They can't get satiated because they pushed that for so long. They pushed over it. And so now they have that. So that's another big thing, right? Is getting people to feel that signal and stop.
Yeah, I can see like with protein how in general I don't see people like, I see them overeating fats and overeating sugar, carbohydrates, but yeah, protein's kind of nice because it's one of those foods that people kind of back off on, like if they hit their limit, or it's hard to eat too much of it, I guess. Unless
you pair it with a ton of fat. It's a lot easier to eat barbecue than it is to eat dry jerky.
You should see how many wings I can eat. Right? When they're dipped in honey barbecue sauce. Yeah.
Brisket.
Then you can override all of that hunger signaling BS.
There you go.
So yeah, after protein, we dove into carbohydrates. So that was pretty fun for people. And I just put up a big picture of, homemade banana chips as like, here, you can get carbohydrates from Whole Foods. You can get it from roots and tubers and fruits and vegetables. You don't necessarily need a ton of goos and gels and replacements. And the numbers that I gave people were start at a gram of carbohydrates per pound of body weight and work up from there. So if I'm 160 pounds and I start with 160 grams of carbs a day, if we talk about Mark Sisson quite a bit, the guy from the Primal Blueprint, he would say, 50 to 150 is like a good range to live in. But then if you're doing these high endurance activities, you might need more.
Yeah.
And obviously today I didn't dive into ketogenic diets and was like, we're not going there. But if we talk about just maintaining good insulin sensitivity, falling in that range of even half a gram of carbohydrate per pound of body weight, and then increasing it from there depending on your activity level.
And when we say insulin sensitivity, explain that, like break that down in a simple way.
So if we think about insulin sensitivity, anytime you eat sugar, sugar is it's traveling through your bloodstream, and it can't just stay free floating in your blood. Otherwise, it can be highly toxic. Mm-hmm. So you have an insulin response in response to taking in sugars. Insulin's job is to grab that sugar, take it to your cells, knock on the door and say, hi, I've got a package for you. Like, this is your delivery. And ideally, the cell opens the door and says, thank you, and receives.
It's sensitive.
It's very sensitive. It should hear the knock at the door. However, if you are insulin resistant, maybe you've been taking in a lot of sugar and producing a lot of insulin, and now your cells hear that knock at the door, and they're like, la, 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 la. I'm not listening anymore. Yeah. So it can be really problematic for people if they've driven themselves to being insulin resistant, because now they might be eating enough sugar, but their cells simply aren't receiving that message.
Insulin resistance is really the foundational problem for most diseases now, because it messes with your cholesterols. Right. It messes with your hormones. Insulin's a hormone from your pancreas. It messes with so many other factors in your body, your metabolism, your thyroid. It's like goes on and on. So if you have somebody coming in, especially if you're doing a diet plan with them, managing what their insulin sensitivity or resistance is, if you don't address that, you're really kind of, again, what's the root cause, right? And so if people are eating a lot of carbohydrate, or if they're starving themselves and doing calorie restriction, they're doing glyconeogenesis by their liver, which I guess is part of the whole ketogenesis thing, pushing sometimes that, getting glycogen to be that's stored to use it as energy. Yeah. But if you're constantly calorie restricted, your body still needs glucose. So what it'll do is it'll just start shooting out its stored glucose by your liver, and your insulin will still go up. So actually people who don't eat enough, they're insulin resistant.
Right.
Because their body's doing that, right? So there's that happy place, right?
Hormones are like such diabolical, sneaky little things. Like you can be like, I don't need any sugar, and your body will create like 4 Snickers bars. It betray you, right? Like,
well, glucose is your main fuel for your brain, and your brain is your hierarchy organ here. So if you don't feed it that, it's going to get that, whether it's even a ketone body, which is kind of the end stage of that process, But
yeah, okay. So when you have, next part.
So for the carbohydrate recommendation, I feel like that's super sticky, because we could talk about keto diets where we're saying eat less than 30 grams of carbs a day, really limit it so that you can get more efficient at burning fat for fuel. Mm-hmm. However, if you have people who maybe are following like a low-ish to moderate carb diet, and they feel like they just like can't shift the car into 4th gear, it could be that they're just simply not taking in enough carbohydrates. And you see that a lot with CrossFit athletes, where they might be following a pretty low carb but not keto diet, and they're kind of living in like a metabolism no man's land. Yep. And so giving people some general guideline, like in the front country, a gram of carbohydrate per pound of body weight. And then if you are training 6 days a week, 2 hours a day in the gym, you might need to double that, or you might need to triple it. Like, we don't know.
You don't know. Like, it's so, to me, I found it so specific to each person. And somebody might do 200 grams of carbohydrate a day and feel like crap, or gain a whole bunch of weight and still not feel good. And then another person might, like you said, need 250 grams or more a day, especially as they're working out and exerting a lot of energy to feel really good. And so I found with carbohydrate, like what I intake and what my wife intakes are to feel good and to to perform well are completely different.
Yeah.
And for me, really, if I'm not working out, I'm not really consuming more than 100 grams of carbohydrate in a day. Like I'm just not. I feel great not taking in more than that. But if I work out, the Haagen-Dazs comes out, the white rice comes out, the sweet potatoes come out, and even and I'm probably at 200 grams of carbohydrate. Like it doubles. It like goes way up post exercise. Usually, I just am hungry and I eat that and I feel lots better. And then the next day I'm resting. The carbs make me feel crappy or sleepy. In that case, if I go and try to eat that many, I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm performing well, and I do gain some weight. So for me, I kind of am like when I'm not really active, my carbohydrates just kind of stay pretty low, and then when I'm active, they go way up post exercise, so when I'm in the backcountry, I would suspect that I'm probably at 200 grams of carbohydrate a day.
Yeah, and it could be that, once again, depending on how much time you're spending huffing it uphill, you might ratchet that up to 300, especially in the days leading up to leaving for your trip. You might be starting to stock up on glycogen so that you're kind of ready to rock and roll to do the big climb. And I think that that's where it always comes back to just testing your game day nutrition. So even having that baseline for yourself of 100 is me when I'm, kind of chilling. 200 is me when I'm doing an hour of training. So then what does it mean if I go on a full long day hike? How much carbohydrate do I need to actually feel good for the duration of 8, 10, 12 hours?
And to me, you really don't know that stuff unless you are tracking it. Like if you don't know how much you ate that day and the next day and the day I felt crappy, if you're not doing some tracking, and what I found was I tracked those numbers for like 6 months and just kind of figured it out. And I would put it into like my Plate app on my phone or something. I can't remember which one I was using, but it would tell me my micronutrients, my omega-3 and omega-6 fat intake, the ratio, and it would tell me my macros. And my calories, right, for the day. And after doing that and experimenting with a few things, now I don't really need to track it because I kind of have it figured out. But I think it's a tremendously valuable exercise to track it for a period of time. And you can just there's a ton of apps out there now. And one of the things that was cool was it would ask, did you get your red meat, like your beef or whatever, did you get it from the grocery store or was it wild? And you had to type it in.
Really?
And if you
what
said
app is that?
it was my Plate, and if you put in their grocery store, or it wasn't grass fed, then it would adjust your omega-6, omega-3 ratio.
Oh, that's
Wow.
cool.
And so it was fascinating because when you put that in there, it would show you're eating all these meats, even Atlantic salmon, like farm raised salmon, right? And it would show my omega-6, omega-3 ratio at 20-1. So for every gram of omega-3, I would get 20 grams of omega-6, which is like that's hard to deal with inflammation. So it's a bad ratio. Inflammation. Hey, it's like midnight. Okay.
It is kind of like inflation. It's not good. You want to be even out.
It's bad. So that was really neat. That was eye-opening as well because when I put in wild salmon, wild caught, I put in wild elk and deer and all that, those ratios like flopped right away.
Wow.
So it was really eye-opening for me to see how impactful it was to be eating wild game versus grain-fed, farm-raised game or meat. And it didn't surprise me, even when I had cut out grains, why I might have still some inflammation in the hands or the knees or whatever that kind of bothered me. Well, that omega-6 ratio was through the roof, even though I had taken out vegetable oil and taken out all this stuff. It was still in the meat, And so, especially when you're eating all this farm-raised salmon from Costco, which has the prices right. and it tastes good.
Oh, God.
But it's
if one more person tells me that tilapia is their favorite fish, I might lose it.
It's bad.
So bad. Anyway, tangent, but I do think it's really valuable to track it. And these numbers that you're talking about, baselines and where you perform at your best, how much carbohydrate you need when you're on the mountain and when you don't, you can't figure that out if you don't track it for a while and get a feel for those numbers.
And I'm not good with numbers and tracking it. I didn't even know about that app, but I know in the summer when I'm doing all my scouting, that's kind of the best time to figure out where your numbers should be, where you're supposed to be for your carbs. And like you, I'm the same way. I don't take in a whole lot of carbs throughout the year. It's very seasonal. When I really start amping up the exercising and the workouts and then the hunting, I have to have more carbs or I do come out wiped and I just lose all my energy. So I double my carbs in the mountains, at least.
I remember the first time I tracked carbs and stuff. My sister goes, well, how many carbs do you eat? And I'm like, this is like 8-9 years ago. I said, what are carbs? Like, I don't know. And she goes, you laugh, but it's a true conversation. I exercised all the time. You didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was like, I eat eggs and meat. And anyway, she said, well, you should track it. And how many calories do you eat in a day? I'm like, I have no idea. So I sat down and she's like, well, I'd be very curious if all you do is just log it. And so that's when I got this app and I started typing it in. And we looked at it after like 3 weeks. And it was like 4,500 calories one day, 2,500 calories another day, 3,300 calories this day. One thing I learned was that whipped cream has a lot of calories. And I ate a lot of whipped cream at the time. And I was like,
Starbucks too. Like,
whoa.
you look at those drinks and you're like, dude, everybody's drinking
most people drink their
their
calories,
calories.
right?
Dude, I hit like
it's insane.
Like 1,000 calories with my serving of whipped cream. Like it was like
What were you eating
That's
whipped cream
aggressive.
on? Were you just like ketchup, like putting it on everything or something,
Dude.
or what? Like, where were you getting all this whipped cream?
I love cream. I like ice cream. I told you guys earlier. The
We
fattier,
actually
the
bought
better.
you some, yeah.
Yes.
You got your workout in today. We figured we'd
Yes,
treat you to
but
some
I cut back
Haagen-Dazs.
because it doesn't help with performance that much. No. But my point was I learned a lot about when I saw that, it was eye-opening because then I started to realize what carbohydrate was, what it was in, and
You're like, they're in everything.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
and I started to learn which foods were making me feel better and about how many calories I need to feel good when I'm working out, and then about how much protein I need in order to recover from workouts and so on. And so anyway, I think that it really does help. Mm-hmm. You can do it without tracking, but I think it's just a really good exercise in learning those things to track it.
Yeah, whether you decide to track it or you just figure out
Experiment.
I eat this bar at this hour and these intervals, and then you pack that stuff when you're actually headed out there. I think that was the biggest takeaway I hope people took from the seminar today, is that you need to test this stuff.
Right.
I talked about that as a college athlete, how I had dialed in exactly the amount of yogurt I needed before a 2-hour practice. And then I knew exactly what type of bar I was going to have as soon as I got off the water. And I replicated that on game day because we would have multiple races a day. And I did the same thing over and over again.
And that
didn't
worked.
stray from it.
So what do you think would have happened if you stuck some chili in there?
But maybe we would have gone a little faster. I don't know. Yeah,
Okay.
So carbohydrates, that was an easy one. Again, just trying to get people to focus on whole food sources of carbohydrates and maybe not shooting for taking all of the sugar, because I think people are just eating a lot of sugar, especially for breakfast. They're getting that insulin spike and they're getting a blood sugar crash. And then they're rifling through their snack bag an hour after they ate breakfast, and then they're running out of snacks and they're getting really hangry. So getting people to put a premium on good proteins and fats, and then adjusting carbohydrates for their activity level. And then from there, we dove into fats and basically making the assumption that if you establish your protein intake that you need and you establish the number of carbs that you need, that can kind of give you a baseline of, say, maybe 1,200 calories that you're starting with. So if you want 3,000 calories in the backcountry, that's a lot of fat that you now have to kind of sprinkle in there to make up for that calorie deficit.
I see. So you're kind of establishing what your carbohydrate intake and what your protein intake should be, and then you're figuring out how many calories you need for the day, and that difference is maybe fat consumption.
I think that's super easy. That way, if you were even to say, okay, I'm going to do 200 grams of protein just on the high end for easy math for me, there's 800 calories because you're going to get 4 calories per gram of protein.
Okay.
If you do the same amount for carbohydrates, 200 grams, there's only 400 calories from carbohydrates. So combined, you now have, or sorry, I screwed that up, 800. So now you have what, 1,600
calories. Mm-hmm.
So you have 1,600 calories. Well, you probably eat more than 3,000 on a hard exertion day. So let's even say that you need an additional 1,800 calories just from fats. So divide that by 9 to figure out how many grams of fat you need.
Yep.
200 grams of fat.
And these
you're
are
trying to take in.
And so these are just estimates, though. You might be someone who thrives on a lot more carbohydrate and less fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then you might also find that the colder it is or the hotter it is going to impact which fuel sources that you want more of. And then additionally, one of the reasons I really push good quality fats as a great source of fuel in the backcountry is because it is so much more calorically dense.
You know what's great is eating squirrels.
Somebody was telling us that earlier. Like, my kid's favorite protein is squirrel.
I don't know how much fat or
True
protein's
sign
in
of
that.
a redneck.
Yeah, right. Hanging out with too many rednecks.
But I'm telling you, that's a wonderful meal back there.
Why? Because they're fatty or something?
They are fatty. They're nutty. I know it sounds crazy,
Wow,
but
that makes
they
sense.
have a meaty meaty flavor.
Like a consistency, or
Like fat, like if you squeezed oil out of a nut?
like they have it like a rich,
Like a peanut butter
nutty
taste?
meat.
like a pecan.
Sweet, yeah, she gets it. What are you giving me crap for?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it has that, but it seems like this is pretty. I like this, finding this baseline, but like you're saying, you may need to tweak it depending on who you are.
You absolutely will need to tweak it up, down, sideways, backwards, and once again, depending on the trip. But I think that's what people really need is they don't need to be told what products to take. They need to be educated on here's how to establish your nutrition needs, and now you can plug whatever foods you want into this.
So now, well, maybe I'm skipping ahead or whatever, but with that, these guidelines that you have in this baseline, I think quality of food is like this other level, right? Because now you can plug and play different proteins and different carbs and different fats, but not a fat is not the case. Like there's some really good ones and some really bad ones, and the same with carbohydrates and even with proteins. So that's one thing that's cool about your stuff is it's all that sort of like high frou-frou, like organic stuff.
You've done the homework and figured out like the best of the best. And
Yeah.
that's what's kind of going in there.
Well, it's even the simple stuff. Like we've been trying to source dried blueberries, and almost every dried fruit you buy
Add sugar.
they add sugar and safflower oil.
Right.
oil.
And if safflower is a really high pro-inflammatory fat, we have spent so much freaking time trying to source something that doesn't have that. But it's worth the effort because we're trying to give people this really healthy nutrition, and giving them pro-inflammatory fats is not going to be of service to them.
Real quick, describe that pro-inflammatory fat.
Sure. So you talked about it a little bit earlier with the wild versus Atlantic salmon. So with omega-6s and omega-3s, those are essential fatty acids that we have to get from our food. So essential meaning that we don't produce those within the body and we have to take them in. And you want a good balance of omega-6s and omega-3s because omega-6s are what help to generate the inflammation if you twist your ankle. So imagine that sucker gets hot, it gets red. That's an inflammatory response, and you want that healing to take place. However, you don't want it to persist forever. So these omega-6s and omega-3s need to sit in balance. And if we look at our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they might have an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of about 2 to 1, maybe 4 to 1. Whereas in a standard American diet, we might see people with 40 to 1. So it's highly pro-inflammatory because anytime you go out to eat, anytime you eat peanuts or canola oil, soy, safflower, sunflower, any of these seed oils are just going to be loaded with omega-6 fats.
That was absolutely life-changing for me. One of the biggest impacts on inflammation that I dealt with, was getting those ratios right. And it wasn't just at one point I was like, well, all I got to do is take like 10 fish oil pills and I got that ratio down. Well, that didn't really work that well.
You weren't smothering that fire with fish oil.
Yeah, it seemed like so what I figured out, later, I was much better off restricting all that omega-6 intake, like getting rid of all those negative fats, while also simultaneously incorporating the healthy fats in through wild caught fish and so forth. And those ratios then balanced out. Well, after about just 4 to 6 months, I had been like this chronic ibuprofen taker, like just as a prophylactic. Like I played basketball like at 32 years old, 31. I was just playing city league basketball and running all the time and doing some stuff. I did some triathlons, but dude, I just took ibuprofen in the morning, afternoon, in the evening, daily.
Like candy.
After the ball game, before the ball game, and my parents did that. And it's like, you got some joint pain, just take these. And it did a great job for a few years, but then it was just things were falling apart. And so when I switched and I got those levels right, even Cameron Haynes was deep into that, and Rogan's like, dude, you need to stop this crap,
right?
And he quit. Except for when he did the Bigfoot 200, he talked to us about it. He's like, he did eventually have some for that, and he talked about strategizing and using it more carefully. But and I might use ibuprofen on like day 12 of a long hunt, like so I can sleep because I'll be a little tired or sore. My feet might hurt. But I found that cutting out NSAIDs, anti-inflammatory, your ibuprofens, ingesting like good levels of omega-3 and getting that ratio right, and just cutting out those vegetable oils and all of that omega-6 changed my life. Just recovery overnight. The inflammation's not there. I don't have knots or soreness. My hands weren't swollen. My knees didn't bother me. It was like a very I mean, it changed everything. So for, I think, a lot of guys that are in their 40s,
right,
a lot of times they think it's over. Like, my knee swells up all the time.
Most guys just think, I'm getting older.
It's old. It's part of age.
I'm getting older. I'm stiffening up. My joints are going to swell. And, yeah, it's pretty cool that you figured that out and went the other way with it.
Yeah.
Knocked out the anti-inflammatory.
The folks from Epic Bar just started a podcast, the Meat Podcast or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting because Katie and Taylor, the co-founders of that business, kind of start the podcast talking about how they followed a vegan and nearly raw food diet for starters. But that Katie at one point had, damn near elephantitis of her knee. It was so swollen, and she was going to doctors trying to figure out like what is wrong with my knee, because she was a highly competitive athlete, and suddenly she wasn't able to ride a bike or run anymore. And then they had read the blood type diet and figured out they're both type O, and were like, well, I guess we're eating meat now. And after making the switch from potentially a very pro-inflammatory diet where you're just having to eat a lot of nuts and seeds and whatever to get your protein and fat every day, switching over to eating high-quality game meat or lots of seafood and decreasing that overall inflammation, suddenly it cured itself. So that was like a really cool testament that, there's tons of people out there who have experimented with that omega-6 and omega-3 balance, and it has completely changed the level of activity they're able to do on a day-to-day basis over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think people too with the food thing, especially like nuts and seeds, because they go, well, that's like
healthy.
on a food chart, like when bodybuilding food chart, like your fats, you get to have like this, a tablespoon of avocado, a tablespoon of peanut butter. Who eats a tablespoon of peanut butter?
I try every day, and I'm like, nope.
No, I'll
Dude,
have another
PB
one.
Fit is like 4 scoops,
And so they're going like, well, you can eat these fats, and nuts and seeds are so good for you. For one thing, a lot of people have
allergies,
tree nut allergies to it. Peanut butter is really inflammatory, but it's so good. But you should eat a tablespoon, not like 5 tablespoons at the same time. And people will go, well, I'm being healthy because I'm eating all these nuts and seeds, because they are good for you for the fiber and cleaning out your intestines and doing all that and giving you these omega-6s. But if you're not getting those omega-3s, you are sabotaging yourself. And people get confused though, because they go, well, wait, I'm supposed to eat almonds.
Right.
Well, yeah, you're supposed to eat like 5 almonds, not like the whole bag that they sell you at Safeway, where you just sit in your car during traffic and binge on almonds. It's hard because a lot of healthy foods are healthy to a point.
In moderation.
And then they go over that where you just have that imbalance. And
except for Haagen-Dazs.
Because it only has 5 ingredients.
That's right.
Now, have you talked about this before? The differences between like grain-fed, grass-fed, and then as well the Atlantic salmon, like you joked about, versus wild-caught salmon, and the differences between the fats in those.
Yeah, I got that question today because people were really curious of where they actually get these omega-6s from, and if they can sort of keep their eyes open for them. And so pointing it out that even if they are eating grain-fed meats, that meat, the fat is going to be much higher in omega-6s and much lower in omega-3s. Whereas if they're eating their own wild game, or they're eating grass-fed meats, or they're eating wild-caught fish, that can be a wonderful source of dietary omega-3s for them. And I would much rather prefer that people eat 2 to 4 pretty good-sized servings of fish a week than be pounding fish oil. If you were going to spend money on fish oil, spend it on
actual
pre-portioned packaged fish that you can get at Costco that's all wild caught.
Because processing fish oil is kind of a risky business.
It's a little spooky, right?
Yeah.
And then additionally, I was telling him our trick, which is to give the chickens flax, let them convert ALA into EPA and DHA, which is the form of omega-3 that we metabolize. And so if you actually are going to the store and you're looking at what eggs to buy, looking for some that actually have a lot of omega-3s in them can be a good way to supplement that.
And that's another good topic. So this whole conversion, it's not like you just eat a fish and then, fish is better because it goes straight to that EPA, DHA, right? But like a nut or a seed, like flax, you get omega-3 from that. But some people have sluggish enzyme that convert, so they eat a ton of flax and they don't actually convert to EPA and DHA.
Okay, you two just geeked out and left the rest of it.
We could be here forever.
The usable form that your body needs is it this like biochemistry, right? Like she obviously knows biochemistry, which I just like get off on talking about biochemistry. But
it's so much fun.
If you have if you have like at the top, what's at the top, like flax oil, you eat the flax oil. Well, that flax has to have an enzyme conversion that goes like 3 or 4 steps down to EPA and then DHA, which is what we use.
So
some people, like a vegetarian, says.
So you're saying that the flaxseed has usable nutrients in it.
But it has to be enzymatically broken down to get the useful nutrient, which is DHA.
So the body has to do a lot of work to get to that.
A lot of work.
Does it?
Some people convert really good. Boom, 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 boom. So they can take flax oil and they notice a change. They love it. Some people are like, I take all this flax oil and I don't feel it because they either don't even have the enzyme conversion ability or that's sluggish and it doesn't do it. So the cool thing about
genetics
fish, and this is where the study of genetics, which we haven't even got into, is crazy right now. But fish is great. It's a perfect food because it goes straight to those two.
So it's very interesting.
Without conversion problems.
I like that.
If you're a vegetarian, it sucks though, because if I say, well, you're probably not converting that, you need to eat fish. And they're like,
but I don't kill animals.
but there are lots of vegetarians
we do on
that
Gritty
eat
Bowmen.
fish. They'll
We
eat
kill
fish
animals.
because they realize they need
but
that.
we feel grateful for it.
Yeah.
So let me say, so I listened to Rob Wolf years ago, and he had Chris Kresser on, and he talked about.
Boy, you're like throwing out all these big names.
He's talking about
Man crushes.
Oh,
Jeez, my
yeah,
gosh.
I know.
I'm like, are we in the hunting industry here, or are we like at a Paleo FX conference? I don't know what's going on.
But he's talking about this omega-3 issue and oil, and you mentioned it a minute ago. It's really sketchy when you start taking fish oil pills, and some people are so wrecked that and they don't know where to begin. And I'm like, I mean. I tell them take some pills, take some fish oil.
Most doctors tell them to take some pills.
Get some fish oil. But one thing that Chris Kresser said was, there is that risk because, you don't know what they did, how far they heated it up to denature the oil.
Heavy metals.
And the heavy metals and so forth. So
if it's rancid.
Rancidity.
Yeah.
One of the things that he said he recommended fermented cod liver oil from Green Pastures. So I got that years ago, and I like cinnamon tingle, folks. I can recommend it. You guys laugh, but cinnamon tingle, it's about the only one that my wife thinks it's disgusting.
It's pretty rough still, but they're the Weston Price Foundation. I mean, they come from that whole philosophy that we need these specific oils, fats, meats, like it's important, and they make that special. What did you call it?
It's fermented,
and that's the whole Weston Price's deal.
So they get the oil out of the fish's liver because that's where it's very concentrated. And I guess the way I understand it is they ferment it out, so it's not cold processed or it's not heated. Like if you go and get the cod liver oil that my grandpa used to get, they heat that up really hot to get that oil to extract that omega-3, and
those little fats are sensitive.
Yes, like if you take a fish and you leave it out for a day, it rots pretty fast. Whereas you can take coconut oil and leave it out for years and it's still great. So not every oil is it doesn't stay preserved as well. But I started getting that, and there was, what is it? I don't know the ins and outs of it. But there were vitamin K and vitamin
Well, you need
A
vitamin K for vitamin D conversion. So
right. So he was saying that nature is pretty awesome because when you eat the fish, it comes with all these other things, vitamins and minerals and such that actually work in concert with each other so that you can convert and digest it in a way that it's useful. And a lot of times when you just get an omega-3 pill from the store, pop that sucker in, you don't have these vitamins and these minerals and stuff that come with the fish if you were to eat the whole fish. And so you can't really process all that fish oil you're eating. And in fact, it can oxidate.
It's like that with any food. This is the whole concept of eating
whole foods.
They have antioxidants, they have available nutrients, minerals, things that they all work together when you eat it to digest it and absorb it. And if you just this is the thing what medicine did. This is what drug companies have done, is they've taken a constituent of like statins. It's a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Naturally statins can occur in foods where it decreases your cholesterol when you eat it, or it's part of the matrix and your body naturally knows what to do with it. Well, if you take a constituent out that, we found that this decreases cholesterol, there's side effects of that because that therapeutic window starts going really small, and now you have more people out here that are having problems even though their cholesterol is going down.
Right.
And so the whole goal with whole foods is that it has a huge therapeutic window, so they're slow acting. It's not like you eat one day of whole foods and then you wake up the next day and you're like, it takes weeks and months for your body to change and do this. But once you get there, it's like better than any drug because your body's utilizing everything that's in that vegetable, everything that's in that fish, and they work together. it's just like the animals you hunt. Those animals know what food they need to eat, what grass they need to eat, what time of the year they need to eat.
Right.
Other animals.
They're not
they
eating
need to
donuts
eat berries.
unless they're bears. And then,
well, yeah, we can bait them,
and we can blame
trick
humans
them,
for
and
that.
We can feed them to eat things that we think, and they'll come to it. I mean, it's easy food, and they need to eat too. But
whole foods are critical. And he talked about this fermented cod liver oil being pretty much like a whole food, as close as you can get it to eating a fish, without actually eating a fish. And so I've used it for years. I kind of cycle on and off of it, and it comes with a little syringe, and so you can just zip out like a tablespoon or teaspoon worth. And if you just kind of stick it in the back of your throat and just kind of let it drip,
and you
It's
chase
that bad.
it with
Then
whiskey,
then
it like goes down really
and with the
smooth.
cinnamon, it just smells like rotten fish and cinnamon. And so my wife loves the romantic kiss that follows. And
Fish kisses.
but seriously, I started taking that, and maybe it's the vitamins and minerals, the whole package, but that had a really good impact on reducing inflammation and helping me even be more regular with bowel movements and all kinds of other things. It was just really good. And so if I recommend to people, if they're going to do a fish oil supplement, I really like Cinnamon Tingle. Green Pastures. They do not sponsor the podcast.
But maybe they will.
But it's fermented cod liver oil. Don't let the word fermented or cod liver oil put you off. Focus.
But it
focus,
is from a cod's liver.
Focus on Cinnamon Tingle. Okay?
Really brings it forward. But when we talk about the backcountry, that was one thing that people had a lot of questions about, is what are the good sources of fat they could be taking? And once again, everybody in the audience was just so sharp, and people were asking about the difference between grass-fed butter and ghee. So if you take ghee, it's less likely to go rancid because you've removed those milk solids.
What's ghee?
It's clarified butter.
So they in India.
How
they
come I
make
don't
it,
know
and they
this?
just boil.
so
You
good.
boil it until all the milk solids come, and then you just scrape it all off, and then you have like butter, but it doesn't really go bad.
Really?
Yep, shelf-stable
And
butter.
if you have a
Is it
dairy
yummy?
sensitivity,
Because I love butter.
Yep.
if
You'll
you
like
have
it.
a dairy
It's pretty good.
sensitivity, you can eat it. It's better to eat.
Yeah, so ghee,
Me and dairy.
coconut oil.
We're good.
You're lucky.
That's one place where I'm good.
Do you ever
There's no
take like
citrus.
cave-aged cheese with you in the backcountry or anything like that?
I've taken those baby L's.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, I get the really fatty ones.
See, I
not
really
the-
like the Dubliner cheese that you can get at
Oh,
Costco,
yeah.
the Kerrygold stuff, because it almost has crystals in it since
Yeah.
it's aged for over 6 months. That stuff is so
What was it
good.
called?
It's the Dubliner
Kerrygold.
who makes the Kerrygold butter
Really?
from Ireland.
You're going to dig
Okay,
it.
I'm gonna get that.
Yep. So that sort of stuff can be helpful, and I think people just need
Costco
to
has
know like what are the other fats they can take with them that's not a peanut or I don't even know where other people get their fats
So what
from.
are you
Almond.
at? Like what kind of fats are you
Avocado?
adding to your meals?
What about coconut?
Dehydrated meals.
Oh, the dehydrated meals. A
Yeah.
lot of them are pretty low in fat because, as you know, they can go rancid. So something like the dark chocolate chili, we don't add a lot of fats to that at all. We're actually just getting the fats from the meat itself. And you end up with something that's pretty high in protein, pretty high in carbohydrates, and not a ton of fat. Whereas with the salmon chowder, we add powdered coconut milk, and that brings the calories up quite a bit for us.
Right.
So powdered coconut milk, shredded coconut, hemp seeds and chia seeds in the buckwheat breakfast. Because I tried to add beef gelatin to the breakfast originally to bump up that protein. And it was pretty much a 50-50 shot whether people were going to be into it or they were going to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a miss for us where trying to get people good food, but it just didn't really work on a commercial
Right.
scale.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one thing that I've jacked up for like in all the bars and stuff that we make is shredded coconut just because I like the taste of it.
Heck yeah.
And it adds a ton of fat. So
Yeah, I
it's
love
really easy.
coconut.
Yeah, we add it to everything.
That's why I eat like packaroons, like
They're going at
4 to 6 a day.
That's why they're so delicious.
I don't know what my macros are, but I just
I know how many packaroons
it felt
I can eat.
appropriate. So that brings me up. I ate a lot of buckwheat meals, breakfast meals. So I found myself actually wanting to eat like a couple a day. And there's a lot of different flavors. So I would get the banana, the strawberry. There's one with chocolate, right?
The chocolate cherry.
That chocolate cherry. So I would just kind of have, one at breakfast and one in the afternoon. And I would sometimes just heat them up in the morning and just stick it in my backpack already done. So I have one in the morning and one in it's already just been sitting ready for me like later in the day. And then I'd pound packaroons and I just kind of experimented with Jess Heather's food. And then at night I'd have the meal. And man, I felt really good like that. And I just like the buckwheat like crazy. It's so good.
So benefits of buckwheat over oatmeal.
Yeah.
And oats.
So the reason why I chose it originally is because it's actually not a grain. It's a pseudo grain. So it's going to resemble something more like a seed. It's going to be a lot higher in amino acids. And then it's also gluten-free, which is kind of a big driver for me. So, and plus my mom always made me buckwheat pancakes as a kid. So I have like that little soft spot in my heart for those foods. But the buckwheat makes a really good base for us. And then we layer on hemp seeds, chia seeds, shredded coconut, flaked coconut.
It's really meaty.
Yeah, it's very thick. And then we use sucanat as the sweetener. So it's got a lot of molasses content since it's not a super refined sugar. And I also love molasses and like that you get a little bit more nutritional content from that. And then we add dried fruit and some spices like we have apple pie, we have banana nutmeg, strawberry vanilla, blueberry cinnamon, stuff like that. So it's fun to kind of jazz up that base that we have for our hot cereal.
Right.
And once you eat a couple, you're like, you just want to eat more.
Is that it?
For me, I mean, some people will probably be like, this is too chewy and these hemp seeds and, whatever.
These chia seeds are stuck in my teeth.
Yeah, they're trying.
Another thing.
But all
are awesome.
But all that stuff is just like, to me, it's like meaty. It goes down easy. It digests well. The energy delivery isn't like oatmeal where I feel kind of jacked up and then I'm crashing. It seems
Bloated
slow and sustained. Yeah. It just, I was really impressed with those. And then coupled with the rest of it, like I said, the only problem I have is there's only a couple I can get down that aren't too spicy. And it's not that they don't taste good. It's that spices, for some reason, this white boy is not. It's not.
You need to do a white bread line.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good one to call it.
Just
bland.
There's
Yeah.
no sweet.
Bland.
This is called bland dinner, bland lunch, bland breakfast.
None of the fancy names that you come up with that are so creative. Just bland.
And then you can say, inspired by Brian.
Gritty
Call.
Bowmen.
The Gritty Bowmen.
The gritty recipe.
That's what I was going to ask you guys is what you take on your trips. If you have any secrets you want to share.
Divulge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, similar to yours, kind of why we did it was the foods that were out there. We just wanted to know, just like why we eat the meat that we eat, we want to know what's in there. So with the garden and everything that we put up, we just want to add all that stuff that we can to especially our dinners. I don't know how Aaron goes to sleep at night without pounding down a dinner. That's like my favorite part of the day. I look forward when I'm hiking back to camp.
You know why?
I am so looking forward to that dinner.
Aaron is a mystery, so we won't even like. Aaron will get back, put in a chew, drink a coffee, and fall asleep. So don't even
and then sleep for like 3 hours and get.
Don't even like try to figure him out, man.
Man, but yeah, so
it can't be good, right? Like it can't be good. And
I'm
yet,
not even saying anything,
and
Aaron.
yet,
I'm just gonna,
he's freaking me out.
Cortisol's like
if it's working for you, great. But
he's a freak. We'll leave it at that
Yeah.
for sure. But as far as breakfast, now we have not done the buckwheat. That's something I've wanted to do since I heard you before. I'm still doing oatmeal, but I add a lot of stuff to it. I'll add chia. I like hemp seeds on everything. It's just it's protein,
they have
right?
a good taste to them.
Yeah, I mean we put them in the
They're
bars
nutty
that
like
we make.
squirrel.
Yeah.
They are.
They are total squirrel
Telling
food
you.
taste.
But yeah, as far as bars, we put a ton of. I do add some protein powder and stuff like that. I use oats as kind of a base, and then like the hemp seeds and the chia and the shredded coconut, all those things. They've just things that I've experimented with, and I feel good when I eat them back there. And they're dense. They got a lot of calories, and it's just worked for me. Like I've said before, though, it's like you got to go up and you got to experiment. And I've always found that scouting is the best time to do it because, like we've been talking about, everybody's different. Some folks need more carbs. Some folks can't do protein powders. Just figure it out before you go on a trip and blow all that time and energy.
And the other thing is getting vegetables, I think. So when you're dehydrating for us, he's making like spaghetti and chili, but really we're just adding like tons of garden vegetables to that chili, like probably you are. And it's giving you some vegetable content because I think that's what
that tomato sauce
has got. Most people are missing, right?
So many green peppers and onions and
except
kale.
The salty Mountain House stuff. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
I started making zucchini and yam and parsnip chips. And they're so freaking good. I can just sit down and eat those like crazy because they put a little bit of olive oil and then some coarse sea salt.
How do you do the zucchini, though? Because we did the zucchini, and they were kind of weird.
Just with a mandolin, if you can slice them 1/8 of an inch thick.
Super skinny.
Then they actually get crispy. Otherwise, they're like
too wet.
Gummy.
Take forever. Yeah.
But yeah, getting vegetables out there is super tough. And that's where making your own dinners or finding a product that you like, and it might be Heather's choice. I definitely thought about that in developing the meals. Is most of the time we're deficient in vegetables and protein when we're out there. So
Absolutely.
How can we get more of that to folks?
I've really learned.
And again, the powders that we make that are so easy and simple.
But we dehydrate powders.
We add that stuff to everything. I'll add those to the bars or the muffins or the dinners, and you don't taste it. So if you don't like kale, you don't even know what's in there. It's just a little green, and that's it.
He makes the dehydrated onions, sweet onions. And if you don't like onions, they're like eating candy.
If you use a sweet onion like a Walla Walla,
they're so good. And you put them on
they
salad.
Sound horrible. Like
they're so good.
No, it sounds
chips,
awesome.
But
I just feel
really
bad for whoever's in the house when you're dehydrating them.
That would be me when I'm pregnant. Therefore, it's not in the house. It's outside in the garage.
I kind of like messing with her, like the smells of the house. Like it's like meat in the morning. She cannot stand me cooking meat in the morning. She absolutely hates it, so I cook more of it. But
so odd.
And then kale.
I'm okay with bacon, but that's like a psychological thing, I think.
But to me, coffee and meat in the morning are two of the best things.
Okay, I've never met a human that didn't like bacon.
No.
So far.
Right. There's something wrong.
Do you know anybody?
It must be because we're
even
closely
I think the vegetarians,
they
like bacon.
They do.
They just don't want to eat it.
They
Pigs don't have souls, so they don't care if you eat pig.
Oh, speaking of bacon, I made a coconut bacon a couple weeks ago. But you take the flaked coconut and you toss it with paprika and cumin and some liquid smoke and maple syrup and cider vinegar, and it absolutely tastes like bacon. It's wild.
What is it again?
It's just a coconut bacon.
Really?
Yeah, you could add it to trail mix and make it a little more savory.
Dude, that sounds...
I like it. So one of the things I was going to say when you were talking about your meals and stuff, isn't it interesting how when you take crappy food, on about day 4, you're like, I don't want to eat this. And you're just like...
That's when you're not looking forward to going back to camp.
You do not look forward to eating anything.
Yeah.
And you open your bag and you're like, there's nothing in here I want to eat.
Right.
But it's funny, I can bring the same... If I took like the banana buckwheat and the strawberry and orange packaroons and salmon chowder...
Sure.
And I eat that every day for 9 days. I look forward to every meal.
Absolutely.
So it's sort of like, it's not that the flavors, to me, it's not flavors you're getting sick of. It's the way the food makes you feel.
Yeah. Yeah, because I agree. I mean, now, since I've been doing kind of what she's doing with her meals, making them to your taste. You know, all we're really doing is making these meals that we enjoy. I would eat it at home. Dehydrating them and taking that into the backcountry with me. So, it's loaded with good stuff. And like I said, I think I go faster going back to camp knowing that I'm going to have that meal. And I never used to do that with Mountain House or Backpacker's Pantry or any of those because it was just...
Well, that's the other thing about your food is it doesn't have some insane amount of salt.
Yeah.
Which...
Man, we've been catching a ton of people who are, hammering us with emails with the salt question. And it's been really interesting. Folks are saying like, wow, there's still salt in the salmon chowder. There's, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but it's a substantial amount of sodium. And what people aren't realizing is that there's 2,300 milligrams of sodium in a teaspoon of salt. And so they just see like, oh, there's more than 100 milligrams of sodium. This food must be high in sodium. And so I think that people have just been a little bit trained to avoid sodium at all costs because of hypertension.
It's not good. Actually, salt
I like
cause
salt.
hypertension.
Like,
right?
I love salt.
The doctor said it.
Salt does not cause hypertension. Stress, sympathetic stress hormones, insulin dysregulation, poor sleep, unregulated. There's salt. People need salt. If you don't have salt, you will be dehydrated. You will have all kinds of like swelling and edemas and
I'm good with salt. Like I like a lot of salt. I kind of need a lot of salt. Maybe because I sweat like a.
You sweat as much as I do.
If you
saw me
sweat
today.
like this guy, you need salt.
I sweat a lot. Like I make Aaron look like I'm wet, like dripping.
I
change
it
clothes.
today. It was like,
Ryan sweats a lot.
Yeah,
And that long hair, it had like all this.
Disgusting.
It
You know
was
that
kinda,
sign at the gym that says people don't want to lay in your sweat, clean up your thing? That's my husband.
He was
kind
of
Your
gross.
sweat angel.
I'm like,
But what
I had a guy say,
What was cool
"Man, you're
was-
sweating through your hat, dude."
Yeah, I know.
today
It was
you were. It was like, singing.
Yeah, that's
And
normal.
I
All
sweat through my
hats.
hat often when I'm with Aaron on those hikes. But what's cool with your hair, and probably your beard is going to step up, but I didn't see it today, but your hair got drenched and it was dripping off. And then as we stood there at snow level, it froze a little bit. And you kind of had that, it was like Donnie Vincent all over.
Geez.
Like
Donnie on the
I
mountain.
am so impressed that you call him Donnie Vincent because when he sent me some Facebook thing years ago of this guy walking down a mountain on his horse doing this thing.
It's like the rivers divide.
And I go, and he's talking, and they show a picture of him, and I go, oh my God, that is Ryan. Then he's talking about his movie. I said, this dude is you. Like
the first time I saw
I
Ryan,
swear.
and it's in that video you said is on your website, that first time I saw him, I was like, I looked and I was like, okay, it's not Donnie Vincent, but dang, man, that's and it's like I really wanted to grab that beanie and stick it on him and just kind of see how it turned out. Your teeth are straighter.
Are they? Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, when my iPhone asked
Not that that's
me,
a knock on Donnie. And Donnie's bigger than you.
He is.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's bigger.
well, when
He's a
I have a
beast.
picture of Donnie and Ryan together at ATA.
Yeah,
and when my iPhone
SHOT Show
asked
or
me,
ATA, wasn't it?
ATA.
when my iPhone says Ryan Lampers and Donnie Vincent's face pops up on my phone, I'm like, it's reading Donnie Vincent's face against Ryan. I'm like, this is like too crazy. So yeah, we played a game on it one night with Snapchat. Me and my daughter, you can place your face in someone else's face. And Donnie Vincent's, I said, they had all these faces. They said Ryan Lampers. Donnie's face popped up, so we put it in this little thing. Who is
It
this?
really is like the
Is
hair
this
and the
Daddy?
whole kind of thing together.
It's the vibe. Like
Yeah.
him and Donnie, like in the video, they just have that same vibe. And I
Yeah.
said, you need to make a movie.
Like
this
a-
guy's making movies.
Sort of like a hippie poet, mountain man,
There's only one Donnie
Killer.
on the planet.
No,
There's only one
Donnie
guy.
probably talks
That
more than
cool.
Ryan would, but Donnie's pretty. Like I was like into Donnie, and I didn't even like hunting back then. I was
He's
like,
pretty deep.
I'm like Donnie. I said, this is the kind of hunter guy I want to hang out with. you know?
That's so funny.
But then I was
Because
like, wait a second, I'm married to
you
this
kind of
hunter
married
guy.
one like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes
no,
sense.
it was cool. So it was good. It was cool. He sent me a picture
Has he always
of
had
him
long
and Donnie
hair?
together, and I was just like, oh,
No,
my-
I
my
haven't
crush.
actually.
Really?
When we met, I had super short hair.
Really?
Yep. I don't know what's happened, but
oh, our wedding
I'm
pictures.
just-
we look like his
I'm
hair
just
is
too cheap to
buzzed.
get haircuts.
And
He look like he looks kind of young. He really does in the wedding pictures.
we were 20. I was 24. He was 23.
Yeah,
were
he
young.
looked like kids.
We are kids.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
mine. I mean, I should talk. I mean, I look like a baby face.
You and your wife's wedding picture, you look like you just
like
stepped
17.
out of like grammar school.
It's pretty bad. I was like 170
I mean, the
pounds.
look on your face is still the look on your face. Like you're like all happy, like I just got married.
That's right.
It's cute.
She's a cool girl.
No, that's good.
So, what were some of the other questions that people asked today that kind of surprised you? Anything you haven't brought up already?
Man, I was just impressed with kind of the knowledge in the room. Oh, the best thing. Both seminars, the last question was, what about beer? It was like, after all of that, they're like, okay, but.
What about beer?
Yeah, pretty much. So
can you dehydrate that? Is there a way to?
Somebody tried and failed as far as I can tell. But yeah, that was pretty funny just to see how, when it all comes down to it, people want to know how much they can get away with.
So
human nature.
What about in the backcountry caffeine?
What about it?
How much do you recommend I should have a day? Because don't tell me I shouldn't have it.
I never said that. Yeah, I mean, the doctor probably knows better than I do people's caffeine tolerance, but we did talk. I had one person come up who was saying that they do the bulletproof coffee even in the backcountry. So they actually take the little milk frother with them when they go. So they can put their MCT oil and their ghee in their coffee and then make themselves a little latte while they're out there. Which I was like, that's pretty fancy.
It's pretty good. I guess you're going to get more sustained energy because you're getting fat. That you could load up your fat in that one or two of those a day.
Right.
Dude, Aaron's coffee intake is shameful.
We're still trashing on him.
Well, I mean, for me, coffee, obviously there's a reason why you wouldn't want it in the backcountry, right? It's a dehydrant. I mean, it's going to dehydrate you a little bit.
Yeah, if you overconsume it.
But the mental advantage it gives you back there is well worth that.
Yeah, we talked about that with Brian Barney, and he was just like, I can't give up my coffee. It's
what about tea?
It's one of those.
You like tea?
I like tea.
Yeah.
The sweet and spicy, good earth tea. That's my jam.
Oh, yeah,
really?
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
See, mine's licorice tea.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I love licorice tea. Most people don't. There's only a couple of us.
That's why you get all of it.
And it's got to be bitter if you're going to have tea.
Like
if you sweeten it, it's just wrong. Black, green.
You like black coffee?
Black tea.
Oh, do you do coffee?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's right. You don't do coffee.
No.
Oh,
Coffee's probably
not good for you.
We actually need you to drink a lot more caffeine.
I actually can do caffeine. So here's the thing with stress hormones. If I have a week where I'm not stressed out, I can do coffee just fine. If I have a week where I'm really under a lot of stress, I don't sleep good, I've got long days, I drink coffee, I'm freaking out. I'm just like, what is wrong with me? I'm driving to work and my arms are like tingling. What the hell's wrong with me? What disease do I have? And then I realize I drank too much caffeine. I'm flushing. I drank too much caffeine is because caffeine initiates adrenal activity and it can initiate adrenaline and cortisol secretion. So most people are exhausted because their stress hormones are out of whack. So they're drinking caffeine, which can stress the adrenal more.
Right.
So if you're under a lot of emotional and I think psychological stress, that sympathetic stress that's different than maybe the sympathetic stress of hiking up a mountain and expending the energy and the calories. If you're sitting in traffic and you're thinking about all the things you have to do and all the bills you have to pay and all the things you're not getting done, caffeine is probably not serving you very well.
Yeah.
But so I am sensitive that way. I've done my genetics and I'm a fast caffeine metabolizer. You would think I'm slow, but I'm just, my stress will dictate that.
So you were already kind of getting your own caffeine in a way by your own.
And if I do too much
by
caffeine,
your own stress
I push
inducing.
it too hard, and then my
then
adrenals go.
Yeah.
This don't feel good. Don't do this, right?
Yeah.
But
so you're drinking
Ryan
caffeine when you really don't even need to drink caffeine. That's what you're saying.
I can actually quit caffeine and not really get
She really doesn't do good with caffeine. And then she feels good for a while, and then she starts on the caffeine.
I know.
And then 2 or 3 days of it, and she realizes it makes her feel bad, and she gets the jitters. She's just a lightweight.
Yeah.
With everything.
Well, except in like.
But coffee is kind
Climbing
of like
mountains.
the smell
It's
of
not.
bacon. It's just like
Yeah.
a cup of coffee in the morning is like
Have you ever
so
tried decaf?
good. Until 2 hours later, I'm like
You
There's
laugh.
this novel
twitching.
thing
Called decaf. I mean, I don't know.
We've had it in
We
the
do,
house.
we do decaf, yeah.
You should just psych her out. Here's coffee, but it's really decaffeinated, and then she thinks it's not decaffeinated, and she's like, "Coffee does."
I actually
for me."
like the bulletproof coffee, but I can't do a lot of the fat. My gut kill me, so I can't do MCT oil, but I can do coconut.
What's MCT
We've tried
oil?
the MCT oil, and like Joe Rogan's always like,
Medium
I just squirt
chain
like,
triglyceride.
and I watch that, and I'm like, I would be like on the toilet all day long and sick. I can't do that, but I can do coconut oil. For some reason, it's not that straight MCT, and I can drink it. But I love the butter, and I love that, so I'll do that once in a while. But
So, Heather, what are some of well, tell us about Heather's choice. So, tell us about kind of how things have changed since we were here last year.
Whew, it was one hell of a year. I mean, it was awesome. I just even coming back to this show was so humbling because coming here a year ago, I had 2 dry bags full of food and my little banner that wouldn't stay on the front of my booth. And I was just like, hi, everybody.
I'm Heather.
Just felt super silly. And, everybody was so sweet and just very welcoming. And, coming back this year and having like banners and having help and having an email sign up sheet and like tons of food, and just felt a lot more official. And it was like, all right, this is now a business.
Yeah.
Last year it was my expensive hobby, and now a year later we're actually a full-blown business, and people were excited to see us, and we had repeat customers, we had new customers, and the whole weekend was just a really good experience for us.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the last year has really been just trying to keep up with demand. That's still a big struggle for us because it's really tough as a brand new business to look forward and project, how many trips are people going to go on? When are they going on trips? How much food are they going to order? And it's really kind of mission impossible for us just to try to stay ahead of that.
What's your highest selling product?
The salmon chowder. Hands down, far and away. The salmon chowder, the orange vanilla packaroons, and the blueberry buckwheat breakfast. We just cannot keep on the shelf.
Those 3 are like money.
Those are your favorite, right?
Yes.
That's what I've heard you say.
Yep.
I know. The first time I heard about you is I watched Gritty and the Scotsman. They're sitting on a log somewhere, eating all your stuff, and
Having a
just
little picnic.
smacking it, and like the salmon chowder's like, oh my gosh, they're just like still eating it, And I'm thinking like, wow, that's really cool. I that's where I got turned on to the idea of it's actually like you're eating it and you're not having this like gross like ugh,
Mush?
Not
Baby
just
food?
Like spooning it in and swallowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there was a lot of lip smacking in that one.
There was a lot of.
Remember that.
We were trying to give a thorough review. Okay.
Swishing it around.
We got all different kinds, and we like saved them up for that day, and we like mixed them all up, and we're trying them all, and it was funny. I had a lot of people actually come up to me on this weekend and said that was one of their favorite shows to watch. I was like, we were just dinking around, but that was a fun little experiment, and it's really neat to see you grow and to see people value this kind of food and where this is taking them. We're all about wild game and trying to eat well and live well, and so you really embody that with your product. So it's pretty cool. What do you think is going to happen, or what new products do you have kind of coming down the pipeline, or have you developed that maybe I don't know about and others? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, honestly, my team is kind of having to kind of hold the reins back on me, and they're like, you can't release too many new products at once. So we definitely have 3 new packaroon flavors that are pretty well said and done. We'll have a dark chocolate mint, an amaretto, and a blueberry almond this year. So those will do pretty well.
Dark chocolate mint.
Yeah. So packaroons are they're always fun to make. And it's kind of like the buckwheat breakfast. You have your base recipe, and then you can just kind of go nuts with flavors from there. But one of our big hurdles is we're going after our gluten-free certification, which is kind of a headache, but that's going to be really nice for a lot of the customers we get who have full-blown celiac disease. You know, they need to have that on the packaging to really trust us. And then additionally, we're going after our USDA certification. So that way we can start incorporating grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, pasture-raised pork. Because up to this point, we've been dealing with FDA, which they basically look at seafood and exotic meats. So getting this USDA certification is going to allow us to kind of broaden the number of proteins that we're using.
Right.
And then we can broaden the adventure menu. So
got it.
That's going to be fun.
That is great.
Wow.
Yeah. But man, if I had my way in the world and it was like, I'm going to wave my magic wand and boom, like this is Heather's choice, it would be the hot drinks, the breakfast, the bars, the jerkies, the snacks, the dinners, the desserts, everything, so that people could come to us and say, hey, I'm going on a 10-day trip. I need 10 days worth of food. And we would have it all packaged up. Like, here's your 10 pounds of food. Right. There you go. You're on your way. So that would be fun to work towards.
Jesse Wise from Train to Hunt said you were working on a dehydrated donut for him.
Oh, he did, huh? He's probably the same guy who said I'm working on a dehydrated ribeye bag. Heard that request a few times.
That sounds like a genius idea. Well, very cool. So where can folks find some Heather's Choice?
Right now, we're at heatherschoice.com. We, in the past year, opened up a storefront in Anchorage. So people can actually order online, select pickup in store, and drive over and come say hi to us, which is awesome. And we now do order fulfillment 5 days a week out of that location. So a year ago, we were shipping 1 day a week, and people were having to wait a really long time to get their products. So now that we're doing that, we can get stuff to people faster.
Okay.
And then we're looking to move into a lot of really kind of core gear shops across the country. So right now we're working with about a dozen, and our goal is to hit about 50 gear shops across the country by the end of the year. So it's been really helpful for people to reach out to us and say, hey, I shop at this gear, shop or outlet in my hometown. It'd be great if I could get Heather's Choice here. So that's really helpful for us, because then we know who to reach out to and who to send samples to, and hopefully bring them on as a partner for us, because we all know food is the last thing anybody thinks about when they're planning a trip. So if you can't pick it up at the store on your way out of town, you might forget about it.
Right. Wow. So what is the lead time right now? Like if somebody put in an order and ordered a bunch of stuff?
Yeah. So what is it? It's Saturday, or, we would ship on Monday. From our spot in Anchorage, priority mail can take 3 to 5 days, depending on where you are in the country. Okay. So, and maybe 7 at the most. So again, that's kind of our main gig for the next few months, is trying to predict how much people are going to order and making sure that we're making enough packaroons.
So I saw a couple of sales that you did, and I loaded up at that time. Whoa, I think there was a packaroon sale that was like 20% off or something.
You're like, what?
Dude, I bought a lot of packaroons that day. So sales, do you have some throughout the year? People can, kind of just follow you like on Instagram?
Instagram's a really great place. Also, opting in for our newsletter is a good way, because you immediately get a 10% off coupon code for your first order. And if people go to our website, they'll see that right up top above the navigation bar.
So it's just heatherschoice.com.
Yeah.
And if they go in there, they can find the newsletter. They can sign up there, get 10% off their first order after they've signed up. And then you're saying that you'll tell them through the newsletter when you're doing some kind of sale.
Yeah, and the big one for us is really our birthday sale, which is August 15th. And I know that's kind of funny. The business has a birthday, but the business definitely has that very distinct day in my mind of like, I launched the website and it was game on.
Yeah.
So that's always been really big for us, but we're definitely gearing up for spring and realizing other people are too. So we won't do a sale every month, but we definitely do them quarterly.
What else is on your website?
Right now, there's the adventure menu. We also have a little bit of swag. So we have shirts and hoodies, those kind of fun things. And then my big objective for this year is to start doing more of this nutrition information for folks. So releasing more recipes, dehydrate your own food, doing that sort of stuff on the journal. And then getting together our recipe book and starting to put together trip reports from our ambassadors. So we've got a lot of stuff I'm trying to put together this year, which includes affiliates and an ambassador team. So our core group of people who will be sending us some really awesome stories of their adventures. And that way, hopefully we can just generate a lot more interesting content for the website, because it's something I would love to do in my spare time. Which I don't have anymore. So trying to get some folks to help who are still getting out there and doing some really good trips.
Yeah, and affiliates is a great way to get a lot of people behind you without having to pay, like a marketing team.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
a great way to.
Yeah.
So we've got some really cool stuff coming up this year, but I'm genuinely anxious to come back next year to the rendezvous and see how different things are.
I know, it's crazy. Like, how things change 1 year at a time. It's like if someone would have asked you what it would be like this year, last year, could you have pictured this?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Every time I looked over there and I was looking at your booth, I mean, you were slammed.
Yeah, we had just
people there the whole time.
A ton of people, and people who are just really genuinely curious to learn how to eat better. And I mean, that's super encouraging in and of itself. People aren't coming over and saying like, I'll eat Mountain House till the day I die. Instead, they're like, hey, I really want to eat better. And gosh, like if that's a service that we can provide, that's really rewarding in and of itself.
Really, I really do. I really think, as hunters and gatherers and gardeners, like some of us aren't gardeners. I really think that, though, from this community that we come from, we should really push that health and wellness and lead the charge in that space, because that's really a lot of what we're about,
Especially if you want to do it for a lifetime, There was a lot of guys in there today who, gosh, they've got to be 70 years old and they're still gearing up for their next big trip. And it's like, wow, that is so inspiring. Like you're still getting out there and shooting elk with bows.
Dude, Greg Munther, I interviewed him last year, like 73, out there hiking with llamas, shot a ram with his recurve. I mean, that's impressive stuff.
It's amazing.
So definitely, I think, health and wellness, and you just got to get.
That's what's
you got to get it
allow
dialed.
you and I to be doing that at 73.
Well, that's the goal, because all these young guys think they're going to take me out, and it's like, no.
It's all out of spite.
Someday they will. I hate to say that, but by
you
then,
shut your mouth, Doc.
By then you'll be wiser and gentler. You won't really care. You and Ryan will be on the deck. I remember when I see that stupid crap all the time. Wear myself out.
Yeah. By then, I guess you don't mind so much, because
well, it's about the experience.
your testosterone is tanked. Let's just admit it.
Right. There's no more winning hormone getting you up that mountain. You don't care to win anymore. It's just gone. No.
That will be the kinder, gentler Brian. Then, no, I'm not.
You're so aggressive right now.
Yeah,
your testosterone.
Hey, shut up. That's it. We're ending this now. No, I had a really good time tonight with both of you, with all of you guys. I thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. This is fun to talk with another biochem geek, nutrition geek. I love that.
We speak the same language.
We do.
Heather's my hero when it comes to dehydrating backcountry food.
Speaking your language.
Incredible. Absolutely.
No, we're doing the same
to make
stuff.
a business out of it. That's just an entrepreneurial.
It's so cool just to watch somebody like you
and get there. That's awesome.
I know.
Built this up. Yeah, it's
really would like to talk about that as well down the road, and get your whole thing on launching a business and starting a business. And
I don't know anything. I promise you.
Hey,
I'm learning it every day.
You must know something.
Yeah, no doubt, because what you've achieved is very impressive, and it's your dream, your passion, that kind of thing, and it's really neat to see someone's like goal and passion come to life. It's inspiring. It doesn't matter if it's because you want to start the next coffee shop, or mountain biking store, or if it's this whole food thing or a podcast. It's really neat to see it.
Haven't you had the same story over the last year where stuff's really changed?
Yeah. But we've talked about that a lot.
Dropped.
My testosterone's struggling.
My life is so great, but I feel like crap. Like, what's happening to me? It's called life.
Yes. But no, I don't know about you, but the stress level has been a little more intense this year than it was last. I love it, but yeah, I got to figure out, how to relax a little more, probably.
Well, that's what's been interesting is I keep kind of looking back at one of my heroes, Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia, and how he set out and he said, we're going to be here 100 years from now. And I'm like, I can't imagine running a business for basically the entirety of your life. Like, that would be really challenging unless you put some serious checks and balances into place.
Yeah.
And this year, for me, I just energetically said, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And there might be some burnout, or there might be some times where I get really tuckered out, but it also feels good, just like being on a mission trip, saying like, I am committed to doing whatever it takes to make this happen, to get to the top of this mountain, or to make this business successful.
Yeah.
So there's a whole nother energy that comes along with that level of a commitment too.
Aaron and I were on the Black Hearted podcast. Sounds kind of dark, but it was recent. It's on entrepreneurship, and it's with the guys over at Black Rifle Coffee Company, and they were talking about starting a business, doing entrepreneurial type stuff. And he's like, yeah, there's this huge secret, around it on how you achieve it, not really. It's just a lot of work, like really hard work.
There's no magic bullet. You want to start something, and especially if you're starting from the ground up, it takes certain people.
Yeah.
You have to have some sort of ability to face your fears, deal with stress, manage failures and crisis, but the reward is, it may be like you don't make any money and everyone else is making money but you, but you go home at the end of the day and you're your own boss, and you can change things if you really want to, and hopefully the reward is going to be that you get more time with your family eventually, and you get to have a lifestyle that helps you for what you're promoting. You're promoting health. You're promoting healthier food. Hopefully you're going to get to be part of that life cycle and not just be like working a job you don't like and, living that life. So if it's passionate and that's what you want to do, I guess the hard work is worth it.
I think so. I just think a lot of folks that are trying to start their own deal, that it's hard, but it's, like you said, you were like, if I die this year, I die. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it might be a
you
really
must have had
year.
the demand, though. That's the other thing. There's plenty of businesses out there that start and they don't maybe get the publicity you got or the support you got, and they don't get the demand. So obviously in the last year, the public has said, we want this product.
Yep.
Which is where you're at now. Like, what? I have this big vision, and that's because there's people that like your product. So that says a whole lot about you.
Yep.
I think.
Oh, the packaging too. It's so cute and pretty and always so dialed. It's like
That's what matters.
It's got like soft corners.
Like,
and it's
so here's the
white.
thing.
When he told me Heather's Choice, I was like, that's not like a very rugged name. It's kind of like
sounds like a boom checka wow wow kind of like movie or something. But
Dirk Diggler style, right?
Right.
Music.
And so, but one thing I was going to say is Heather's. Her attention to detail is a little intense. So, just gonna say, I'm not gonna say anal retentive, or OCD, but it's borderline, right? And so I think it's really neat because you care. Like, the website is dialed, the videos are dialed, the message you're sending is dialed. It's so clean and well done, and then the food, it carries through through your food and your recipes and the quality all across the board. It's just the best of the best. So then what she does on top of that, and I don't do this because it's overachieving on a whole nother level, is she sends packages and things to people, and they're like, with her handwriting is ridiculously cool, and so it's like all neat and nice, and it's always something very thoughtful and nice, and it comes in the mail, and you get like a couple packaroons, and it's like, thank you for, whatever. That's a lot of work, man. Like, I'll just like send you a text. Right on.
But
good job.
you know
Thank you. Like, we're
But
done.
You know what's the secret? Like in my medical practice, like when people give me or I'm like, what's going on? I need more patients. What's happening? And I had an entrepreneurial guy come in, and he's like, you don't do follow-up. Like, you need to call these people every 30 days, and you need your office manager to send them an email. And we started doing that. Holy cow. They go, wow, my doctor's actually calling me on the phone to check up on
I'm
me.
not going to lie. It's really cool when you get a Heather's Choice package in the mail that you didn't see coming.
Is what makes your business, because people go, she actually hand wrote this? Like, who writes handwritten messages
That's
anymore?
what I mean. Like, the girl's not sleeping.
I'm buying
like
from
something is.
So we talked about caffeine.
Yeah,
Now it's my drug of choice.
Yeah, but that's what's gonna boom her business, because people are, every time they think I need dehydrated food, they're gonna think of that little handwritten note, and they're gonna be like, oh, I got to get online and order my food. Yeah. That's what they're gonna think about.
It matters.
And that's the personal touch that a lot of big businesses don't have anymore, because, they're too big to have that. So, I think that's awesome.
It is.
It's fun.
Well done, Heather.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And folks, go get some Heather's Choice and stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
Thank you.
All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowmen TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean, so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the Elk 101 website, where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will?
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.